Have you ever thought that maybe, just maybe, the secret to sounding more natural in English isn't in a textbook, but hidden in a children's book? Well, it turns out some of the most useful everyday phrases are tucked away in stories we all know and love. So today, we're going to crack open a modern classic to find some linguistic treasure. We're diving into the wonderful story A Squash and a Squeeze by the brilliant Julia Donaldson. It's all about a little old lady who is convinced her house is way too small. But what she doesn't realize is that her journey is basically a masterclass in English idioms that you and I can use all the time. All right, let's get right into it. First things first, we need to meet our main character. She has a problem, and believe me, she is not quiet about it. So here's the deal. She lives all by herself, but she complains constantly to a wise old man that her house is just too crowded. Her exact words, "My house is a squash and a squeeze," are just the perfect way to capture that feeling of being totally cramped and uncomfortable. You know, what's so great about this phrase is how it sounds exactly like what it means. You can almost feel the words, right? A squash and a squeeze. They're physical actions, and they just perfectly describe that feeling of having zero personal space. It's such a vivid way to say a place is crowded. So how would you use it in real life? Well, imagine your whole family is suddenly working and studying from home in the same tiny apartment. You could totally say, "Wow, our apartment is a real squash and a squeeze right now," and everyone would get it instantly. Okay, so the wise old man's advice is, let's just say, a little strange. He tells her to make her already crowded house even more crowded by bringing her hen inside. And her reaction is just priceless. What a curious plan. I mean, she's completely baffled. And honestly, can you blame her? What a curious plan is just a fantastic and kind of polite way to say, that is a really weird idea, and I have no clue how that's going to work. It shows you're thinking about it, even if you think it's totally bizarre. For instance, if your friend says they're planning to hike to the office through a blizzard, instead of saying, "Are you crazy?" you could just smile and say, what a curious plan. It gets the point across, you know? So now, this is where things start to get really wild. Because if you think one little hen is a problem, oh boy, just you wait. The little old lady's house is about to become a full-on barnyard party. The wise old man just keeps going. First, it's the hen. Then he tells her to bring in a goat, which immediately starts chewing on the curtains. Then a pig, who gets into all the food. And for the grand finale, a cow that starts dancing on the table. The chaos is just off the charts. And this, right here, is her breaking point. The house is an absolute zoo, and she has just reached the end of her rope. She cries out that she's tearing my hair out. Now this is a classic. You're not literally pulling clumps of your hair out, but you're so incredibly frustrated that it feels like you might. It paints such a strong picture of someone who is just completely and utterly overwhelmed by a situation. And oh man, you can use this in so many everyday situations. Stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, you're tearing your hair out. Your computer crashes right before you hit save on a huge project. Yep, you are definitely tearing your hair out. It's perfect. Okay, so she's reached rock bottom, she's at her wit's end, she goes back to the wise old man, who, it turns out, actually had a brilliant plan all along. His new advice is super simple. Take them all out. But the lady, she's still skeptical. She thinks, wait a minute, if I do that, won't I just be back where I first began, with a house that's a squash and a squeeze? And that phrase, to be back where I first began, it just perfectly describes that feeling when you've put in all this effort, gone through this whole big process, only to end up right back in the same spot with absolutely no progress to show for it. You hear this one all the time, especially at work. You know, you spend days and days on a project, your boss changes their mind about the whole thing, and boom, all that work is gone. You're back where you first began. But here is the magic of the story. She gets all the animals out of her house, and suddenly, her whole world changes. The same exact house that was weenie for 5 creatures is now gigantic for just her. Nothing about the house changed, not one bit. Only her perspective changed. She finally gets it. Her house wasn't too small at all. And she's so happy, she exclaims, that there's no reason to complain because there is plenty of room. And that really is the heart of it all, isn't it? Plenty of room isn't just about square footage. It's a feeling of abundance, of gratitude, of having more than enough. The story uses a crazy crowded house to teach this beautiful lesson. So let's do a quick recap of our storybook cheat sheet. From this one little story, we've picked up 5 awesome phrases. A squash and a squeeze for a crowded space. What a curious plan for a weird idea. I'm tearing my hair out for when you're super frustrated. Back where I first began for a failed effort, and plenty of room to show you're grateful for what you have. It just goes to show you can find wisdom and great language in the most unexpected places, even in a book about a lady, a hen, a goat, a pig, and a dancing cow. So the question I want to leave you with is this: what everyday wisdom have you found in an unexpected place?